Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Premamritam Manidhi Dhira
Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksuran Militan Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manavistam Savitan Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kalamaya Dadanti Swapadanti Kam. First of all, I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Diksha Guru, Nitya Pravishta Om Vishnu Pada Satarasata Sisi Mad Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Then I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Sannyas Guru, Nitya Pravishta Om Vishnu Pada Satarasata Sisi Mad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha Gurus, Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. I offer my humble obeisances unto Sri Krishna Bhagavan, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, and unto Sri Arjuna, the hearer of Bhagavad Gita. I offer my humble obeisances to the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And I offer my obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here today, my Dandavat Pranams. Okay, so following the 16 questions that are given by Arjuna, they are enumerated here in the second chapter, 54th verse of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj's commentary on Bhagavad Gita. So we are following these 16 questions through the three divisions of Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters being Karma Yoga, the last 6 being Jnana Yoga, and the middle 6 being Bhakti Yoga. So these 16 questions are what is driving the narrative of the Bhagavad Gita. The discussion of Bhagavad Gita is being driven by these 16 questions. We are now up to the 5th question, and the 5th question appears in the 5th verse, 5th chapter. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna. Which path is better, renunciation or selfless action? So today we will speak about this. In reviewing these 2 chapters, I find that Srila Narayana Maharaj's commentary gives a number of details about the different kinds of yoga that are being performed. And so I'm going to rely a little more heavily on this commentary today because I want to get across the minute details that are being expressed by Krishna and by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary. So we start out, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev have pretty much similar translations of the verse. Srila Prabhupada's translation, Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work, and then again recommend work with devotion. Now you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial." So now Srila Narayana Maharaj's translation. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, after first praising karma sannyas, the renunciation of action, You are describing again Nishkam Karma Yoga, action offered to Bhagavan without attachment to its fruit. Therefore, please tell me definitely which of these two is auspicious for me. And Srila Prabhupada is just explaining this straight. So Srila Prabhupada is just explaining this straight, without any change, without giving anything in Sanskrit. He's just saying it straight in English. You ask me to renounce work, and then you recommend work in devotion. Srila Narayan Maharaj's commentary and his translations emphasize the original Sanskrit words: karma sannyas, renunciation of action, and nishkam karma yoga, action offered to Bhagavan without attachment to its fruits, or work in devotion, as Srila Prabhupada states here. So, very important to see that there's no difference between the commentaries. We're just getting some more specific statements in Sanskrit. We're getting the original Sanskrit words, which are helping us to see the difference between the different levels of Krishna consciousness, going up to the point of Kevala Bhakti, which is the ultimate goal. Okay? The Nishkarma Karma Yoga is not actually the ultimate goal. Nishkarma Karma Yoga is on the path, on the way, and we'll discuss that more in the 12th chapter. However, by giving these Sanskrit words, it helps to more clearly define what is the difference between Karma Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Nishkarma Karma Yoga, and ultimately Kevala Bhakti, or pure, unadulterated devotion. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes in here that in the 4th chapter, karma has been described as being superior to jnana. The purpose of this is to encourage ignorant people to perform karma or action properly, and thus ultimately to achieve unswerving perfection in jnana. This 5th chapter explains knowledge of the absolute truth, tat padartha, and the characteristics of those who have an even-tempered nature. After hearing the last 2 slokas of the previous chapter, Arjuna is now doubtful. He thinks that Krishna has contradicted himself. And in this sloka, beginning with the word sannyasam karmanam, he poses a question. In the sloka Yoga Sannyas, which is the Gita sloka 441, you have spoken about karma sannyas, which appears when jnana is produced by the performance of nishkam karma yoga. Again, in sloka 442, tasmad ajnana, you have spoken about nishkam karma yoga, but karma sannyas, renunciation of action, and nishkam karma yoga, yoga of selfless action, have opposite natures, like moving and non-moving entities. It is not possible to perform them simultaneously. Should a jnani perform karma sannyasa or nishkam karma yoga? I have not understood your intention on this subject, and I am asking you to please tell me for certain which of these two is auspicious for me. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's expression of inner dialogue. This is what he does in his commentaries. He has inner dialogue that's going on. Either Krishna is speaking or Arjuna is speaking. He does this in all of his commentaries, and he is just paraphrasing Arjuna and expressing the inner dialogue of what Arjuna is asking in a more detailed manner. It's very interesting because in modern English language, in writing, in understanding the process of writing, and how to write and how to explain and how to express, there's a very famous statement that is given to writers: show, don't tell. In one way, you can tell people this is this. And another way, you can show people. A lot of what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's inner dialogue is about showing as opposed to telling. He's taking the role, or he's paraphrasing from the inner dialogue of the personalities, either Krishna or Arjuna, and he's having them speak to you directly, as opposed to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur telling you what Arjuna means. He has Arjuna showing you what he means by his own dialogue. So very interesting that he uses this particular approach in writing. So we see that this concept of show, don't tell, is something that was there hundreds of years ago and probably thousands of years ago when all the Vedic literatures were first written. All right. Srila Prabhupada explains it in a very simple and direct manner. In this 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. Devotional service is easier than the latter because, being transcendental in nature, it frees one from reaction. In the 2nd chapter, preliminary knowledge of the soul and its entanglement in the material body were explained to Arjuna. How to get out of this material engagement by Buddha Yoga or devotional service was also explained therein. In the 3rd chapter, it was explained that a person who is situated on the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform. And in the 4th chapter, the Lord told Arjuna that all kinds of sacrifice work, all kinds of sacrificial work, culminate in knowledge. However, at the end of the 4th chapter, the Lord advised Arjuna to wake up and fight, being situated in perfect knowledge. Therefore, by simultaneously stressing the importance of both work and devotion and inaction and knowledge, Krishna has perplexed Arjuna and confused his determination. So here we see Srila Prabhupada giving us a very nice summary up to this point of the 5th chapter and to this question which is driving the narrative. And now Srila Prabhupada finishes the purport by saying, Arjuna understands that renunciation and knowledge involves cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activities. But if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work stopped? In other words, he thinks that sannyasa, or renunciation in knowledge, should be altogether free from all kinds of activity because work and renunciation appear to him to be incompatible. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge is non-reactive and is therefore the same as inaction. He inquires, therefore, whether he should cease work altogether or work with full knowledge. This is a very insightful expression of what's going on here. One is showing, one is telling. They're both getting the information across in very good detail. And the only thing that we have to do now is hear what Krishna is going to say about explaining the difference and the sameness, as you'll see, of renunciation of work, or karma sannyasam, and nishkarma karma yoga, works done in devotion, offering the fruit of your work to Vishnu. Sri Bhagavan uvacha sannyasa karma yogascha nishreyasa kara ubhav tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. The Blessed Lord said, the renunciation of work and the work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of works. So, very important to understand this conception. Srila Prabhupada says that fruitive activities seeking sense gratification are the cause for material bondage. So when we work, we talked about this before, karma, vikarma, and akarma. And karma is pious activities which are performed in accordance with the instructions of the Vedas. And the goal is to perform dharma, or religious activities, to achieve either artha, material economic development, or kama, sense gratification. So here, Srila Prabhupada is saying that fruitive activities seeking sense gratification are the cause for material bondage. We're still bound up. Even though karma is pious activities in accordance with the Vedas, we're still bound up. We're still forced to take material births with a material body, a gross physical material body, a subtle material body. We're still forced to remain in the cycle of birth and death, sometime in Swarga, and then again back here on Karmastan, on the plane of fruitive activities. And if we slip up, if we become allured by the modes of ignorance and passion, and we commit activities which are vikarma, against the rules and laws of the Vedas, then there's a chance that there'll be serious karmic reaction, maybe even suffering in the lower regions of the universe. So, of course, for a devotee, Krishna, he is always protecting his devotee. He always performs this service for the benefit of the devotee, that the devotee will be protected under any and every circumstance. But for the persons in general, and even for devotees, we should understand that one must be careful in one's activity. So there's karma, and there's vikarma, pious activities in relationship to following the rules of the Vedas, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, and vikarma, impious activities which are against the laws of the Vedas. But what's being discussed here is nishkarma karma yoga, akarma, actions which are free from reaction, because the fruit of the work is actually being completely offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nishkarma karma yoga is superior to karma sannyas. Even if a jnani performs nishkarma karma yoga, there is no defect. Actually, its performance further purifies his heart, and he thereby becomes more established in jnana. One may ask, if a karma sannyasi has experienced some disturbance in the heart due to worldly desires, is he forbidden to engage in action, karma, to pacify it? Sri Bhagavan answers that such a disturbance in the heart, chitta, meaning the consciousness, of a karma sannyasi is an obstacle to the cultivation of jnana. If he accepts sense objects, having once given them up, he becomes a vantasi, one who eats his own vomit. So, here Srila Gurudev is giving some instruction about sannyas and what is the actual position of a sannyasi and how he's supposed to behave in Krishna consciousness. Now, Krishna is going to give some more details about all of this and give us some further and deeper insights. Almighty Armed One, only the ignorant speak. Did I jump it? Yeah. See? Oh. There we go. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, liberated from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Only the ignorant speak of karma, yoga, and devotional service as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Srila Narayan Maharaj's translation of this. Only the ignorant say that Sankhya, karma sannyas, and Nishkarma karma yoga, works and devotion, are different. The wise reject such opinions. By following either path correctly, one attains the result of both in the form of moksha. And Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev give purports here. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport. O Arjuna, you have asked, which of these two is superior? Now this is, again, inner dialogue. Krishna speaking to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who's now expressing what Krishna is paraphrasing of the verse that he spoke already. O Arjuna, you have asked which of these two is superior, but this is not actually a question at all. The wise see no difference between them. For this purpose, Sri Bhagavan is speaking this sloka beginning with Sankhya. Here, Sankhya, which means Gyan Nishta, being fixed on the level of Gyan, indicates one of its limbs, sannyas. Only children, here Sankhya, which means Jnananishta, indicates one of its limbs, sannyas. Only children of fools say that sannyas is different from Nishkarma karma yoga. The wise do not think like this. This has been described in the previous sloka, Ganeya sa nitya sannyasi. Thus, by taking shelter of either, the result of both is attained. Now, Srila Prabhupada, his explanation, the aim of the analytical study of the material world is to find the soul of existence. The soul of the material world is Vishnu, the supersoul. Devotional service to the Lord entails serving the supersoul. One process is to find the root of the tree, and the other process is to water the root of the tree. The real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then in perfect knowledge engages in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two because the aim of both is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purpose of Sankhya and Karma Yoga are not the same. But one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. So here again, we see how Krishna is showing unity in the two while they remain as two separate paths. Yet, if both paths are geared toward understanding and serving Vishnu, then we have accomplished the same goal by either path. One is analyzing the universe, trying to find the root. When he does, if he's wise, he waters the root. Whereas the Nishkarma Karma Yogi directly begins watering the root of all creation by performing service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is ultimately the goal. The result attained by Sankhya is also attained by Nishkarma Karma Yoga. Those who are wise and who correctly see that Sankhya and Nishkarma Karma Yoga give the same result are actually the seers. Practicing karma sannyas, Nishkarma Karma, Sankhya Yoga, practicing karma sannyas or Sankhya Yoga without Nishkarma Karma Yoga brings distress. But one who performs Nishkarma Karma Yoga becomes a jnani and very quickly attains Brahman. Unless one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, mere enunciation of activities cannot make one happy. The sages purified by works of devotion achieve the supreme without delay. So here, this verse, number 6, gives us a vision of how we can achieve the supreme by either path, but more effectively by the path of Nishkarma Karma Yoga or works of devotion. Whereas those who are under the false conception that giving up activities without doing any works of devotion is equal to or superior to the path of Nishkarma Karma Yoga are deluded. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. So this is very powerful and important conception which is being given here by Sri Krishna. Srila Prabhupada emphasizes the point of equanimity, giving up the desires for sense gratification, and performing works in devotion. One who performs his duty without attachment, this is verse number 10, surrendering the results of unto the Supreme Lord, is not affected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. There's a very interesting analogy we know from that song by Govinda Das, Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Talamala, that the lotus is sitting there in the middle of the water, and that sense gratification is like a drop of water. It comes on the lotus flower and goes right off. It doesn't stay. Okay? So really the lotus is never touched. It's in the middle of the water, but it's untouched by water. The water doesn't saturate into the leaves. It doesn't stay on the leaves. It doesn't maintain. It's just feeding the plant from the root. So although one is in the middle of the ocean of material nature, in the ocean of Maya, by the execution of his duties, Nishkarma Karma Yoga without attachment and surrendering the results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not affected by any sinful action. This is akarma. Inaction with inaction. Because it neither gives a pious result or an impious result. It gives no material result, good or bad. It gives only pure spiritual results. The impressions of material results, remember we talked about the physical body and then the subtle astral body and then the consciousness. So, in this verse, it is saying that one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is not affected by sinful actions, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. We have that song by Govinda Das where he says, Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Talamala, that sense pleasure in this material world is just like water coming on the leaf of the lotus. It comes and goes very quickly. It doesn't stay. So, although the lotus is surrounded by water, just like we're surrounded by the ocean of Maya, material nature, yet the water in that pond does not touch the lotus. It cannot penetrate it. It does not saturate the leaves. The leaves remain untouched, unsaturated. So similarly, one who performs his duty without attachment, offering the fruits of his work to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he's not affected by sinful actions. He remains like that lotus in the middle of the pond, in the middle of the ocean of Maya, unaffected, untouched, inaction with inaction, akarma, no reaction. And these kinds of activities, devotional activities, are called sukriti. This is spiritual credits. And as we talked about previously when we discussed about the different divisions, the gross physical body, the subtle material or astral body, and the consciousness which emanates from the soul, we talked about how pious and impious activities are activities in which we are nourishing and developing attachment for different kinds of sense gratification, legal or illegal. Whether it's sense desires for attaining heaven or attaining some cities or some kind of material perfections within the path of the execution of different religious activities or sacrifices or austerities, or whether we're performing vikarma, which is sinful activities, to enjoy the material senses. The impressions for developing these sense pleasures or these material abilities to enjoy these sense pleasures, either in a particular field of work or a particular field of activity, whether one wants to become very wealthy by being a businessman, or one wants to become very famous by being an entertainer of some sort, or one is just happy developing the level of artistic creative talents just for the purpose of being able to express oneself. In any one of these fields of endeavor, these kinds of material impressions, or sanskars as they're called, are on the subtle astral body. And they're carried from one physical body to the other through the process of reincarnation. And you keep taking births in one physical body after another to try and fulfill those material sense gratificatory propensities and desires. Whether it is to become proficient in achieving fame or knowledge or wealth or beauty or strength and power and influence, whatever it may be. But Nishkarma karma, activities which are not affected by sinful action, which do not give you any sinful reactions, those are called sukriti, and their impressions, the impressions of executing these devotional works, are impressed upon your consciousness, because your consciousness is emanating from your soul and is eternal, whereas the subtle body is temporary. At some point, your subtle body will dissolve, and your soul, the eternal spiritual form of your soul, will manifest. But in the meantime, as you develop desires for pursuing perfection in different material sense gratificatory activities, the impressions of those desires are placed upon your subtle body. And when you perform devotional activities or offer the fruit of your work to Krishna in devotion with the proper moods, then those impressions, which are spiritual, are impressed upon your consciousness because they're with you eternally. And your consciousness is eternal because your consciousness is part of your soul. So, very important to understand that distinction. Now, Krishna is building up to a very famous verse, the verse 18 in this chapter. And he's going to be making some statements about the nature of how one approaches action and inaction in this life. The yogi, abandoning attachment, acts with body, mind, intelligence, and even the senses, only for the purpose of purification. Nishkarma karma yoga. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of his activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled, as we have just discussed. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentality, renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. So there are 9 gates. And these are, when we discuss the construction of the material universe from the perspective of Sankhya, we talk about the 5 gross material elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So earth are the elements that form your bones, your muscles, the fat, the solid things in your body. Water, body is mostly water, there are fluids everywhere. Okay. Fire, that is the fires of digestion within the stomach. And even there are fires in each individual cell that help to create sparks of energy within the body. And even in the brain, the synapse, there's a kind of ignition of memory and knowledge within the transference of brain chemicals. And so in this way, this is the earth, water, fire, air, the airs that are in the digestive system and in the lungs and other parts, and then ether. Ether refers to space, and there are 9 spaces: 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nose, mouth, anus, genital. These are the 9 gates, the 9 openings, the 9 spaces into the microcosm of your material universe, which is feeding off of the macrocosm of the greater universe. So, here, he's saying in this verse about being in control of his nature and mentality and renouncing all actions, meaning materially binding actions of either karma or vikarma. Then he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. Neither working, because when one works at trying to achieve some material opulence, like wealth, power, fame, beauty, or knowledge, the result is that it creates more work. It creates more, causes more work to be done. With each action that you perform, there is a reaction, and there is a response, and it inspires and increases the volume of activity that you have to perform in order to get to where you're trying to go within the material world. So one who is illuminated in the 9 gates, then he resides there happily. And Krishna will use this very analogy about illumination of the 9 gates. Srila Prabhupada gives a commentary. In the commentary, he gives a verse from the Svetashvatara Upanishad, 3rd chapter, 18th verse. Navadware pure dehi hamso lela yate bahi vasi sarvasya lokasya stanavarasya charasya cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of the living entity, is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. So, we talk about the gross physical body, the subtle material body, the consciousness and the soul. But there is one more component, and that component is the Supersoul, Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always accompanying the soul on his sojourn through the material world from one body to the next, from one birth to the next, always accompanying him. And so this personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in the form of Supersoul, which Krishna will say later in the 10th chapter is only a fragment of his grandeur. This personality is within the body of the 9 gates. The body consists of 9 gates, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, the anus, and the genital. The living entity in his conditional stage identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. So this is the point that's being made by Krishna in this verse. when the embodied living being controls his nature and mentality, renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, neither working nor causing work to be done. The embodied spirit, master of the city of the body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So what happens is that this material body is sort of on autopilot. There are certain conditional activities which must be performed in order to maintain one's existence in the material world: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But all of these are done to the minimum, naturally. One is not trying to enjoy the senses of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending in any extraordinary or excessive amount. He's under control of his system. He's under control of his mentality. He keeps all those things to a minimum, and he offers the fruit of all those activities to the Supreme. Therefore, he remains uncontaminated in this material world, and he has no reaction to his actions. He doesn't induce anybody else to act. He does not create the fruits of actions, pious or impious activities. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Whatever happens, his body is just sort of on autopilot. Okay, I have to eat, I have to sleep, mate, defend, I have to do these things. I do them to the minimum, and the rest of the time I'm engaged always in acts of devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then, Krishna wants to make sure that you don't misunderstand that because he's present in your body, that somehow he becomes responsible for your actions or inactions, or for your pious or impious acts. There are people who blame God. You know, of course, in America, there's a famous saying, "The devil made me do it," but in actuality, there are a lot of people who say, you know, my circumstances, the circumstances under which I was in, caused me to behave the way I did. Meaning there's no control. You'll see that different people who commit crimes, as they call them, crimes of passion, in which they beat someone or murder someone, and when you ask them why, it's always, well, somehow they interfered with my sense gratification. I was supposed to get this, or I was supposed to do that, or I was supposed to achieve this, and they took it from me. Not understanding that everything is happening under the modes of material nature, which was talked about in the 3rd chapter, Prakriti Kriyamana Nigunai Karmani Sarvasa. We discussed this verse. But in fact, they perform these acts against others only for the purpose of trying to achieve something for their own sense gratification out of a lack of control of their body, their mind, and their senses. So, now, in order to make sure that people don't get the misunderstanding that because Krishna is present with the spirit soul within the subtle body, that he's somehow responsible, Krishna says, nor does the Supreme Spirit assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. When, however, one is enlightened with knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, Then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Very important verse, that in the night there's darkness. Darkness is ignorance. You don't know what is what. You cannot see what is what. And the result of that is that there will be activities that you may perform that are inappropriate and cause bondage in the material world, either by performing pious activities for higher pleasures in the material world, or impious activities for quick sense gratification. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Now, one of the most famous verses in Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihastina Hastani Suni Chaiva Swapake Cha Pandita Samradarshana. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. Outcast. Why does he have this vision? Pandita, those who are wise, Samadarshana, see with equal vision. Why do they have this equal vision? Pandita Samadarshana. Because they see that whether it is a Brahmin, a very learned and gentle personality, or a cow, or an elephant, or a dog, or someone who performs horrible acts like eating dogs and committing other sinful activities, whether it's a rogue or a gentleman, it doesn't matter. Each individual form that we see in the world, down, Srila Prabhupada said, you see some tiny speck moving across the page of the book. A tiny speck moving across the page of a book. Very small, he said. Hardly visible. There's a soul inside. There's a soul inside. There's a soul, and there's super soul, the Supreme Personality of God. Both are there. So one who has that vision, Pandita Samadarshana, he sees, oh, everywhere I see the soul and I see the super soul. And I see that the bodies are all temples of God. And that within those temples of God, where super soul is residing, is Brahma, the spiritual Jiva. They exist. So all are equal. There is no difference. There is no discrimination. We see all with the same vision. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is to be understood as already situated in transcendence. So here, Krishna is saying very clearly that persons who have this vision that I just described, of seeing the soul and the super soul everywhere. In fact, the Brahmin, the Pandita, the wise person sees that even within every atom and in between every atom, the super soul exists. And he sees that the spirit souls are everywhere, even in the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. There are souls everywhere. There are souls and super souls everywhere. This whole material manifestation of Judd or dead, mundane energy is animated by the presence of spirit, the soul and the supersoul. Life comes from life. So in this way, an intelligent person who has this vision, he's already on the transcendental platform. He's already absorbed in Brahman, or the spiritual consciousness. He is not a victim of either karma or vikarma, of actions or reactions, of pious activities or sinful activities. He is transcendent to all of these things because he is engaged always in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the appropriate consciousness. The consciousness of serving the Supreme and seeing that everything is spiritual, that there's all living entities, every physical body that we see, and everywhere in the whole universe, we see a spiritual being, a spiritual personality, the soul, and we see the supersoul. We see only spirit. And we know also from the 4th chapter that Brahman is the foundation. And so that therefore, all of this, even this dead material energy, is resting on Brahman. It is only a shadow that is covering the Brahman. And by the process of our engaging the different material energies in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it is transformed back into Brahman, or spirit. So an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So the wise man does not delight in them. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is a yogi and he is happy in this world. One who is beyond duality and doubt, whose mind is engaged within, and who is always busy working for the welfare of all sentient beings, and who is free from all sins, achieves liberation in the Supreme. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. So in this way, Krishna is describing what is the consciousness that we should be trying to attain. He emphasizes controlling the senses, being free from greed, lust, anger, desire. He emphasizes on giving up attachment for the temporary sense pleasures of the world and for cultivating our attachment for those things which are eternal and permanent, spiritual activities in spiritual consciousness. This is what Krishna is encouraging. And he says that one who works in this direction, who does give up greed, lust, anger, and lack of control of the senses, one who does have that consciousness, very soon he will attain the Supreme in the very near future. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breath within the nostrils, thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Here, Krishna is now segueing, as they say in radio talk or radio speak. A segue means the transition from a song to a discussion or a commercial, and a commercial to a song. It's called a segue. And so now Krishna is segueing he's transitioning into the 6th chapter. He's talking about this yoga and meditation, being in this consciousness of keeping your eyes and vision concentrated within the 2 eyebrows, which is the Agna chakra. This is the seat of, the Agna chakra is the seat of the intelligence, okay, which is about discrimination, which is about seeing the difference between matter and spirit and the controller of both, okay. This is where we have the Vigyan Moy Kosh. In other words, Vigyan, knowledge of the difference between matter and spirit. There's Gyan, which is knowledge of how the material world operates. And there's Vigyan, the knowledge of how the spiritual world and material world operate. And what is the difference between the two, and who is the controller of both. So the emphasis is focusing here, concentrating here on the Agna chakra, on the Vijnanamoya Kosh, on that which will discriminate between the material and the spiritual and help one to understand the nature of the Supreme. Bhoktaram yagnatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gnatvamam shantim richyate. The sages, knowing me is the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. So how we should think of the Supreme, how we should understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead from this perspective of the Nishkarma Karma Yoga and the Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which are both paths to the Supreme. One is searching out Vishnu by analyzing the material nature, the root of the existence of material nature, and the other is directly serving the root of the material nature. But those who are great sages, who have given up lust, anger, greed, and desire, who have learned how to control the senses and the mind, those persons, those sages, knowing me, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices. In other words, there is no other sacrifice but the sacrifice to Vishnu, Krishna. All sacrifices to the different demigods are all kamaistaistea ritgyana, desires for kama, sense gratification, lust. Out of lust, we are performing yagyas or sacrificial performances to the different demigods only to achieve material benefits. One who knows that Krishna is the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices, of all austerities. In other words, one should not perform austerities for material benefits. Some people perform austerities in order to get some political agenda passed by fasting. Some people perform austerities in order to achieve different opulences. For a woman to become very beautiful, different teeth in her mouth have to be removed so that her cheekbones become higher and she gets dimples. And so she sacrifices her teeth. She sacrifices her weight. She gives up eating. So she sacrifices her eating in order to look thin and beautiful. And sometimes by not eating properly, her hair falls out, her teeth start to rot, and so many other things happen to her body simply because she's sacrificing all of this eating and pleasures of the world for a higher pleasure of the world, being beautiful and being famous. And so in this way, there are so many sacrifices and austerities that one can perform to achieve different material opulences. There are men who work in business that don't sleep day or night for days at a time in order to become billionaires. Like this, they never stop. They're always working harder, higher, faster. How can I achieve greater and greater material benefits in this world? So, the sage, who's controlled lust, anger, greed, and desire, controlled his senses and his mind. This sage knows that Krishna is the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, that he's the supreme lord of all planets and all demigods. Therefore, all worship, all sacrifices should be given to him. And that Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. No one has our best interest in mind more than our eternal friend that travels with us from body to body, the Supersoul, Krishna. Those sages who know these things, they attain peace from the pangs of material miseries, birth, death, disease, and old age within this material world. This is the secret to success. This is the secret to achieving freedom from both pious and sinful activities in the material world. This is called Nishkarma Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. And the scene is now set for the next chapter, the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna will ask the 6th question, Yo yam yogas tvaya prokta. This path of yoga appears impractical due to the unsteady nature of the mind. This comes in the 33rd verse of the 6th chapter. So we see that Krishna has set the stage for the discussion in the 6th chapter by verse number 27 and 28, where he's talking about sitting in the yoga posture, shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is in this state is certainly liberated. This is setting the scene for the 6th chapter, for the discussion about Sankhya Yoga or Astanga Yoga. And we will discuss tomorrow all about Asta Anga, the 8 limbs of Astanga Yoga, and how they are set and how they function, and what Krishna is advising Arjuna in here, which ultimately brings about that question in verse 33. The process you're proposing to me seems impractical because the mind is very unsteady. And then Krishna explains. And so we'll see all of that in the next class that we do. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.